I'm a son Hyperion, and this is Let's Argue. Let's Argue is a series where I go to Twitter and take on your hot Halo takes, your crazy ideas, and your normal opinions. I agree or disagree and explain why. This episode also marks the final appearance of the Fallout poster. I have finally received all the stickers from the first batch for the sticker poster I talked about several episodes ago on Let's Argue. Some of the stickers took a while to get here, but I have them now. I'm going to start assembling them. So next Let's Argue, you should see a sticker poster start up in the back. If you want to contribute stickers to the sticker poster, you can donate money for stickers and a link to the sticker you want to put on there on my Ko-fi linked below. Like in every episode, or almost every episode of Let's Argue, I am joined by a beer. This week I have a Boulevard Unfiltered Wheat, and this is great for me because this is actually one of my favorite beers and in my short list of favorites. Boulevard is a brewery out of Kansas City, Missouri, and the Unfiltered Wheat is an especial favorite of mine. If you are someone who likes a beery beer, and I know that probably sounds a little redundant, but beers these days, there's a lot of gimmicks and all these extra flavors, and a lot of it is a lot of sweet stuff. Okay, if you're not into sweet stuff, but you're not a masochist and you don't want like the nastiest IPA you can find, go get Boulevard Unfiltered Wheat. You know, if you're an avid beer drinker, you probably already know that wheat beers are really hit and miss, and the Boulevard Unfiltered, is a rare gem amongst wheat beers and then a king amongst beers in general. So, yeah, that's enough praise for the people at Boulevard, unless they want to sponsor an episode of Let's Argue. Email me. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into the takes. Be sure you like the video and subscribe if you have not. Today's episode is sponsored by Vite Ramen. I'm excited to be able to talk about longtime channel sponsor Vite Ramen, the healthy alternative to Insta Ramen. I've actually got it right here if you think I didn't have it. Now, while Insta Ramen itself is not an unhealthy dish, it doesn't contain a lot of the vital nutrients and vitamins that you need to get through the day. Vite Ramen, as you can see right here, actually does just that. Providing a long list of essentials that you need in your nutritional diet, Vite Ramen comes packed with extremely key things like vitamin D, vitamin A, biotin, magnesium, copper, iodine. The list goes on and on. You have to see it for yourself. Vite Ramen is also a great company to support, being one that makes sustainable product on sustainable living wages. And as an added bonus, the creators of Vite Ramen are longtime Halo fans themselves. If you want to support Vite Ramen, you can do so while supporting Fresh Baked Halo content. Use my code below to get a special discount on an exclusive Ascend Hyperion Vite Ramen bundle. Get Vite Ramen and other accessories and fun things as well. So don't wait. I recommend Vite Ramen highly and extremely gracious for the team to continue to support the channel and give me the opportunity to talk about the product. Use my code today and get Vite Ramen for yourself. Efrit Actual says the ability for loadout and Spartan equipment would be fine for Halo's multiplayer if we are talking about player versus environment rather than player versus player, and should return as options in a firefight or like mode. So I agree. You will remember that I made a video called The One Thing That Should Not Return to Halo, and that was custom classes. As I kind of broke down how custom classes override a lot of the fundamental elements of equal starts that is critical to Halo gameplay. But that is if we are talking about player versus player modes, PvP. In a PvE environment, yes, I think custom classes could return. I think it offers some type of complexity to the sandbox with how meta classes are fleshed out or having certain builds, especially in games that have equipment and stuff like that. You could develop really interesting play styles. So yes, Efrit, I agree. Player versus environment, 100%, I've got no problem with custom classes. Player versus player, absolutely not. Tyler says, maybe if Certain Affinity took a stronger second in command seat for the Halo franchise, we would see stronger games. I Agreed. And it's not from the perspective, I think it's very easy to see this take, and the spin you put on it is like an anti 343 narrative. I'm not swinging from that corner. What I am getting at here is that I agree Certain Affinity does have a mostly positive track record with their contributions to the Halo series, and there probably could have been and there can be benefit with them taking less of a I don't want to say their backseat because they produce front seat content, but if they were more involved in the grander scheme, I think it'd be beneficial from like a workload perspective and a work experience perspective, and probably a quality of product perspective, from the sense that you have a multiplayer experience dedicated team now fully involved in the multiplayer experience across the board, not just for their own product. So yes, I agree from that perspective. Having their knowledge and expertise and their ability hardwired into the multiplayer experience of Halo could be beneficial and could produce stronger games. Now, I think we got to be a little careful about these equivalencies. This guy is good at this, therefore he'd be great at that, right? People do this with content creators. I'm getting a little off track here. But people do this with content creators. They say, oh man, Certain Hyperion makes great videos about the sandbox. He should be on the sandbox team. Maybe not. You know, I might make great videos about the sandbox, but that's because I have an advantage as a content creator to, one, not be held liable for what I say and do in terms of like introspection. I can just talk about the game and no one's going to lose money or sleep over it, okay? And then two, I have the advantage of hindsight, like all content creators, and don't let any motherfucker tell you anything differently. All content creators have the advantage of hindsight. We often speak about things that have already happened, and that makes it seem like we're really smart and we're really insightful. It's easy to solve problems when the problem's already happened. It's infinitely harder to predict a problem and then plot a path around it. And on this channel, at least, those are usually the things I talk the most about, are the things that 343 or Bungie or Microsoft or whoever could not have predicted. And then I dissect that because I find that stuff really interesting. So be careful with the equivalencies there. And I know it's a little offbeat. I'm not saying Certain Affinity like you can't trust them. But just because they have produced good stuff in the past does not instantly equate to them being like a savior figure in Halo. And I think the same goes for Joe Staten. We treat that man like the messiah of Halo. I think that's a dangerous mindset. He's just a guy. I get he has a good track record. I'm not stupid. I understand that. But to then take him and cast him into this role of the savior and as of the perfectionist, it is foolhardy is the best way to put it, I think. And I don't mean it as an insult. I just mean like there's no foresight there. We're putting too many chips in one basket. Or is it eggs in the basket? You get what I'm saying though, right? So I agree with you conceptually, V. Tyler, but with caution, I agree. Yo says, one of the biggest worries for Halo Infinite in the future is that they're going to add a lot of legacy weapons like the DMR or Carbine because of people's nostalgia, rather than adding weapons that actually bring something new to the sandbox. So I think then the perspective we're talking about is you're worried about this as in if they did this just for nostalgia's sake, that's a bad thing. To which I disagree. For a weapon to exist in Halo, from my personal perspective, it does not necessarily have to add something new, okay? I think any weapon that exists in the sandbox, if we're just pulling from weapons that have already existed, they're all different enough to stand alone. And the thing about this type of take, it depends on how much of a sandbox purist you are and where you personally draw the lines of how different two weapons have to be. And that line is going to vary from person to person. There are people in the Halo fan base who think the AR and the SMG are too close. And there's people who think the AR and SMG distinctively serve different roles, okay? So there is a layer of subjectivity that you have to consider there, and everybody wants their subjective idea to be objective. Anyway, adding weapons with repetitious function. So let's say there's both the plasma rifle and the SMG in this game. Okay? I don't think that has a negative connotation. I don't think it detracts from the gameplay experience, and I don't think it has a negative impact on the gameplay experience as long as those weapons are still functionally viable on their own. So, to put that into perspective, if 343 was going to add any SMG back to the game, I would want the Halo 5 SMG, because that iteration was the most viable on its own. I would not want the Halo 3 SMG, because that was weaker in performance and also reliant on certain gimmicks that don't appear in Halo Infinite, like dual wielding, for example. So the weapons that they bring back, even if they're a little functionally independent, still have to be strong enough to return. And it's for that reason where I would not want the focus rifle to come back to Halo, because despite it being very unique, it is not a strong enough performer. It's not going to be viable in the Halo sandbox, or the Halo Infinite sandbox, without some serious iteration. So it's a really interesting take. And I love stuff like this because I don't think there is some black and white, right or wrong. I love the sandbox purism arguments because it's very easy to just jump on a side and argue on behalf of those people. And I know it because I've done it. I've done it for both sides now. And it's one of those things where both sides make valid points about what is good in Halo, and I don't have a definitive conclusion on what is best. I personally am all for sandbox completion. I like very full sandboxes. I don't mind the repetition. I would like to see legacy weapons return, as this person says, just for the sake of having them, because why not? So yes, I disagree with you saying this is a negative thing. So Kishan says, showing Chief's face goes against a key part of what makes him special. The take from the cast of the show is dead wrong in my opinion. We don't need a human face to connect with a character. It's a better form of acting to show what one can do with so little emotion. Oh, so little express emotion. Forgive my reading error. Kishan, I agree. I think, ironically enough, the Halo show's interpretation of needing a human face is very quickly defunct by the success of the portrayal of the Mandalorian. And I'm so sorry, I forget his name in the moment. I'll put on, I'm going to expose myself. I'll put it on the screen, I'm going to take a guess. Is his name Dev? Isn't it something like that? It's like something short, right? Din? Din is from Zelda, isn't it? That's like one of the goddesses. Dev, Din, fuck me, I don't know what his name is, but you know what I'm saying. That character was extremely successful and had not appeared in face form for nearly the entirety of his show. And this is going to be a bit of opinion, and some people might take offense to this. I think what was most impactful about that guy finally revealing his face is that actor, whose name I forget, Pedro Pascal, that could be wrong, is not a very attractive guy. Okay, and bear with me, it's not an insult. What I'm getting at is that he takes off the helmet, he's just a normal looking dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is just a fucking guy. There's nothing necessarily physically impressive about him, and I think that further imposes a better theme where, like, with the mask on, you can relate to him, and then with the mask off, you're like, oh, this guy's my uncle. As where the Master Chief, I agree, for the last 20 years has been a faceless character. Aside from, we get some loose hints he's a white guy, but for quite some time, he could have been anybody. And I think that's partially, you got to remember that Halo is a game media first, and I don't mean that as in like chronologically, I mean it as in like the volume of its content. It's a game media first. So there's a difference there where faceless characters in games, I think, are the product of gaming, representing like the avatar, representing the portrayal of the character and the vessel, right? And I'm not saying Master Chief can't have a face. I'm just saying that it's like this guy says, he didn't need one. You know, he's not that type of character. For example, like Darth Vader. Like, you don't ever see the maskless Darth Vader. Darth Vader appears as himself in all media involving him. You don't see like fucking shriveled up Darth Vader t-shirts. you see the visage of the Dark Lord. You know, there's power and impact in that. And Master Chief's helmet visage is stand out enough to represent him. I agree with what you're saying, Keyshawn. In the case of the Master Chief, he's a character that can be best related to via his actions and his ability to portal into the viewer or the player. He doesn't need a face to do that. Some characters do. Master Chief doesn't. So, yeah. Broader audience? I don't know. I don't know who it's for. I don't get the Halo TV show. Someone explain it to me in the comments. What does it all mean? That's going to do it for this episode of Let's Argue. Thanks for tuning in like always. Like the video if you haven't, subscribe to the channel if you have not, and leave your comments below. What did you think about these hot Halo takes? Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. You can join my Discord link below. Don't forget to use my special code to pick up your package of Vite Ramen. And until next time, I'll catch you all later.